Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman. We're lucky to have with us today Anna Tobias, who is an Olympic gold medalist in sailing and also probably one of the best CrossFit participants in the country, if not the world. And you might know her as Anna Tunnicliffe. Tobias, and first of all, I appreciate you coming aboard. I'm talking to you from Pittsburgh, I believe. Am I correct?
Yep, Pittsburgh. Thank you for having me.
We always open this with sort of a general question. As I'm doing background on your interviews, you're a world-class sailor, you're a world-class CrossFit. Would you have been a world-class softball player or a world-class any other sort of athlete because of the talent you have and because of the concentration you bring to the plate as an athlete?
I don't know. I'll be honest, I didn't even know what softball was until I was like 13, 14 years old. So probably not that one. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was funny. I was listening to somebody talk about like directing kids at a young age, whether you focus on being one sport only and developing that, or you do as many sports as possible. And eventually they like filter down until you're left with the one sport that you truly love. I think I was multiple sports and it filtered down to the sports that I truly loved. And, you know, I probably the sports that I found are the ones that I ended up doing.
I asked the question because a couple of years ago they asked Tiger Woods, if he wouldn't play golf. He said he wanted to be a defensive back in the NFL. And the guy interviewing him said, well, there's not a lot of call for 175-pound, 6-foot defensive backs in the NFL because you may have to be a great golfer, but it doesn't always translate. So I think that's part of that process. But you're more of the multi-sport athlete process. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, and everybody's different. Like, there's no right or wrong way. Obviously, Tiger Woods has played golf his entire life and is extremely successful, but there's plenty of people that have done multiple sports and then are now successful in the one sport that they ended up doing.
Mentally, what's tougher, CrossFit or sailing?
They're tough in their own different ways.
How so?
So CrossFit is tough in that, like, you just have to go to a deep, dark place, and even before the workout starts that it's going to hurt and it's going to be like miserable, but fun miserable. And then sailing, I think, it's mentally tough because there's so many factors out of your control. Like, the wind shift could come and you had no idea it's coming and it could completely change your race, and so being able to mentally switch and not get frustrated by it, but make that situation the best situation you can and grow from it. Like, I think that's really challenging in sailing. And so I think it's more of like a controlling the uncontrollable in sailing mentally. And then in CrossFit, it's just about pushing to that pain cave.
You want to talk about CrossFit going to that dark place. Would that be something like marathoners breaking through the wall? They talk about the wall in races where all of a sudden the body produces extra endorphins and all kinds of energy does that happen in CrossFit?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think it's more of a, I think it does. And I think it's about like finding that like extra gear to push into when everybody's fading out. And I think it relates into sailing too. Like, let's take laser sailing, for example, right? Like, everybody comes off the start line feeling super fresh and going, and then slowly like people start trickling out, and the people that can being extra fit really helped. But like, if everybody's at the same fitness level, who's going to have that mental fortitude to, all right, this hurts, but I'm going to keep pushing just as hard.
The pushing through that pain or pushing through that level of whatever your body is doing to you is the difference between a world champion and a guy that doesn't get there, that ability to push through that wall?
I think that plays a big part of it. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely in more sports than others, but in most sports, I would say the people who are willing to go that extra mile, they say, so that extra little bit of hurt is going to be the one that comes out on top.
I asked the question because the sports I grew up playing and the sports I've been involved with in my life don't really have that component in them. We were always in good shape, but we never had to worry about, it was never an endurance thing. It was never a long distance kind of process. So I always marvel at that process because I want my body to go to that place, but there's nothing that pushes you there. And I think probably CrossFit might be something that would at least move you towards that direction.
Yeah, I think it would, but I think you could take it to anything. Like, I'm not a big baseball fan. I don't know much about it, but looking at it, it's more like explosive power stuff, right? So you just need to have explosive power when the time's needed, And so how do you get more explosive than the person next to you? But that's when it comes into the gym, You might not be trying to find that next level on the field, but you do that next level in the gym, So pushing through, a set that you think you might fail, but could you really, if you push that extra little bit, stand up that squat? Could you, do that extra curl? That's where it comes into play in other sports, I think.
As a goaltender, you don't do a lot of pushing. You just sort of skate off the bench and get in one position and stay in place. But I certainly appreciate what you're saying. Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. We're lucky enough to have with us today Anna Tobias. Anna's a gold medalist, and we really appreciate you taking your time. And I want to take you all the way back. We kind of start the interviews from the beginning, and we want to take you back to Doncaster, England, which is where you're from. So kind of take us from England. You end up in Perrysburg. You end up in Toledo, go to Perrysburg High School. What brought you from England to the United States?
Yeah, my dad got transferred in his company when I was about 12 years old. So yeah, we packed up shop and moved over to Perrysburg, or the Toledo area, and that's where life in America started.
Where's Doncaster in England? Whereabouts? I'm not familiar with the town.
Pretty much, if you take the UK, the British Isle, or the England, basically, go right in the middle. That's pretty much where it is. It's not surrounded by water. It's fully landlocked, but the island's so small that you can drive like 2 hours and be at water. So.
Remember what it was like being 12 years old and say, Dad says, by the way, we're going to America?
You know what? When I first was told we're moving to America, I was absolutely petrified because I really thought that all of America, was like New York City. And I really thought like it's just skyscrapers and like roads and traffic and everything. And I was like, oh my God, this is so different than what I live in. And then we flew into Detroit and I'm like, where are the buildings? It's just fields. And so then I learned obviously that America wasn't actually like what you see on TV, like New York City.
Did Mom and Dad sail?
They do. My whole family sails, and that's how we got into sailing. I was never forced into it. Growing up, my parents, when I was super young, they bought an old wooden 40-foot yacht that they gutted, redid, and then we spent our summers sailing that, cruising up and down the east coast of England. And I learned to sail. They forced me to learn how to sail so that if something happened to them, that my brother and I would be able to like somewhat sail the boat in a safe way, until help came. But we were never forced into racing.
What was the family boat?
The boat was called Gemini. I don't know what type of boat it was. It was just a big, wooden, beautiful boat, 40 foot.
Okay. So something you'd have to learn to sail.
Yeah, you'd have to know somewhat what you're doing to control it, yeah.
No, growing up in a sailboat, it's a great place to, it's a great opportunity for younger folk to learn a recreational activity. And I think that's kind of cool. Yeah. I think when I think of Perrysburg, I always think of it, if you're an athlete and you play any kind of competition in Ohio, you always see their football field as you're driving down I-75. It's right there on the sort of the first town first thing you see as you're coming down. Yeah. You guys joined North Cape Yacht Club, am I correct?
Correct, yeah.
In LaSalle. So how did you obviously spent time on your parents' boat. How did you started with Opties? I mean, how did it all start?
Yeah, so just because they never forced me to sail, race didn't mean that like I wasn't curious about it. So they had another boat. It was called the Formula One. I think it's like a 22 foot, like basically sportish boat. So we started sailing that at Rutland Reservoir which was south of us. And they had a massive sailing community there. And then they had an Opti squad. So we joined the Opti team. We did the 2-week camp or the 1-week camp every year and went racing in that. And the squad was really good. I didn't do very well during those camps. I was not in like the top team. I was in like the lower teams. But, we did it for fun and I enjoyed it. Kind of like I liked the competitive side of it, but I didn't do very well. So then I always hated it. So it was kind of like a love-hate relationship with sailing. Really would have rather not done it most of the time. So, yeah.
Talk a little bit about North Cape, beginnings of being at that yacht club. It's got a very successful junior program.
Yeah. So we're fortunate we came in. They were super welcoming. And the junior program was established and we hopped right in and joined in and learned a ton sailing there. They're a very supportive club. They really supported their junior members and the junior sailing team. And it was a really good place we had all sorts of conditions there on that end of Lake Erie too. So you got to sail in tons of different conditions and some great sailors come from there too. So we got to, we'd get coached by them every now and then as well. So, which was a good treat.
Do you remember, this is kind of a thread throughout the shows we've done. Do you remember when the hook of sailing kind of went into the brain as something that was more than just a hobby? It became sort of obsessive?
So I think it kind of like all lined up with us moving to America and the summer after. So when we moved to America, like it was in the June, May time, I think. And so I got into the junior sailing program and I was actually quite good when I got there. So I was like, oh, winning is kind of fun. I like this. And so I started to like enjoy it more and more. And then the following like 96 Olympics happened and I saw like the medal ceremony and I was like, wow, I want a gold medal, and I think from that point on was kind of where I was like, right, I could do this in sailing, maybe. So.
That's a pretty good big goal at that point, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I told my parents I wanted to win a gold medal and they're like, okay, cool. But nothing else was really ever said of it until like I went to university.
99, you started sailing laser radials, am I correct? So roughly in that time? Full rigs?
Yeah, because we didn't have radials where we were. So I just started sailing full rigs.
You had some success on the laser pretty quick. Why on that boat versus something else?
I don't know. I think I like the physical side of it. I think I've always been into like something that challenges you physically. And so I really liked the fact that you had to, work hard to make the boat do what you wanted it to do. And especially I think sailing the full rig first. Like I said, I hopped in the full rig and then so I'd go to like nationals or something and I was sailing against like Andrew Campbell, Clay Johnson, like really good sailors. Full rig sailors, and so I had to work my ass off to even come close to like staying with them. And I think it like again, right place, right time. I don't know what it was, but like I just got beat, and I didn't like losing, so it just made me work harder and harder.
When did you know you were maybe national level? Did that something that came earlier, or is it something that you said you got beat a lot? But did you know that something intrinsic inside that you could get there?
I just think like I said, I hated losing. It wasn't so much about winning. I just didn't like to lose. And I really wasn't good I wouldn't say I was good until I got to college. Like I learned a ton in college and got a ton of sailing time. And that's kind of where everything really started to click. But I think that like, because I'm too competitive, I think. So in my youth sailing, like it just kept firing up the want to win or not lose, I guess.
Do you think being too competitive is a problem? Because I don't think it is if you're in athletics.
No, I don't think it's a problem as long as I think you control it in a positive way.
Right.
I think you can get like if you're super competitive and you lose and you can learn from that losing experience, I think that's a positive thing. If you're super competitive and you lose and it's not your fault and you have a temper tantrum and everything like that, then I think it's a very bad thing because I don't think you're going to learn from it. And I think, fortunately, I think maybe it was the way I was brought up or whatever, but like, you know, if something happened, it happened. Learn from it and make yourself better out of it.
We heard between the lines, when the whistle blows, it's over. Let's go get another day and start over.
Exactly.
Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Who was the first person that recognized your talent in your mind? Was it your college coach?
Maybe. I mean, outside of my parents and their belief in me.
No, I mean, that's a given. But who's that outside influence that sort of opened the door to bigger and better?
I mean, definitely my college coach, Mitch Burnley, and Mark Zagel. They were the two coaches when I was there. Definitely, I think, believed in me before I believed in myself. Like, I believed in myself in a certain way, but they believed in me in the correct way. Like, maybe like they smacked my ego down a little bit and then kind of built me back up. And then Luther Carpenter on the Olympic scene, for sure.
Now, you ended up at Old Dominion. So how do you get from Ohio to Old Dominion? Because is Old Dominion a sailing power? It was when you made it a sailing power with the success, but was it a sailing power before you got there?
Yeah, when I got that, my freshman year, the women's team and the co-ed team were ranked number one nationwide. So they were definitely a powerhouse team. How did I end up there? It's rather silly. I was told, well, basically my parents were like, you need to go away for college. Like, don't stay around here. So I was like, all right, they're like 12 hours minimum. I'm like, okay. So
wow. That's
12
unusual.
hours driving. And I think it's more just because like get out, like experience the world sort of thing. And, you know, if I'd have said, hey, I'm going to go to Toledo University, they'd have been fine with it. But like, I think they were encouraging us to like go out and see the world. And then I visited St. Mary's. Liked it, but they didn't really have what I wanted to study. Got to Old Dominion, they had what I wanted to study. Loved the fact that I didn't have to de-rig my boat every day, and was sold. And that was really the only place I applied to.
What was your studies?
I double majored in accounting and decision sciences and minored in music performance.
So if CrossFit and sailing were not a part of it, you would be a 38-year-old accountant?
Yeah, I'd be rich.
Okay.
Well, more rich than I am now.
All right. How did you get on Old Dominion's map? Because you're a junior record, I'm assuming?
No, I wasn't recruited. That's just where I wanted. I just looked up college rankings and looked at schools that had accounting and checked it out. There wasn't as much recruiting back then as there is now. So I just dropped Mitch a note and was like, hey, I'm interested in the school. I'm going to stop by for a college visit. Can I meet up? So that's kind of how it went.
And so when you got there, it's more of a walk-on then, I guess, right? Rather than a recruited athlete?
Yeah.
Well, coach must be pretty happy because you ended up at the ICSA Women's College Sailor of the Year. So, here comes a walk-on. Turns out to be the best sailor in the country. That doesn't happen. I can tell you as a coach, that doesn't happen every day.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the sailing scene back then, like in colleges, was a little. The way I understand it, there wasn't much recruiting going on back then. It evolved quite quickly after I either like left school or towards the end of my college career. So it's one of those, and there's no scholarships in sailing, so I think that evens out like where you want to go as well. At least back then it did.
What'd you learn about sailing in college that you didn't know prior to going to Old Dominion?
I learned a lot of discipline. It was about reps. So because when I got there, like I said, the guys and the co-ed team and the women's team were number one. So they had I was like the 7th skipper or 8th skipper, or super far down the list. But being able to practice with them, 4 days a week, 5 days a week for my entire freshman year. And then from my second semester sophomore year through the end of my senior year, I sailed 4 days a week and every weekend that we were in school or that we were in season. So I got a ton of sailing time, and just reps, basically, like repping out start lines, repping out rock roundings, repping out situations where boats are coming together. It was an invaluable experience that if I didn't have, I probably wouldn't have had the sailing career that I had.
At Old Dominion, coaches help you learn all the processes, and is sailing in college, first of all, you sailed 420s and lasers, or just the lasers?
We sailed mostly FJs and then some 420s and then radials like 2 or 3 times a year.
So going from radials to a 420 where it's a crew now, does that help the learning process as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You can always learn in every boat that you sail, right? So my first 5 years of youth sailing, I sailed in FJ with my brother and then my other friend, Nick, as my crew. And then, so I had like teamwork experience leading into college. But then you're sailing with somebody that you don't know really right away. So you're learning them, you're learning how to sail together, communicate. You learn a ton of like teamwork and, valuable lessons, not just for sailing, but for life.
You realize in college that sailing is not a career in terms of financial career. Is that something that plays on your mind? If we were a first round draft choice in football, you could sign a contract, and it has to come into the thinking process, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, you can definitely make a career out of sailing. Plenty of people do. And, you go into the professional sailing. I wanted to choose the Olympic route because like I said, in 96, I said I wanted to win an Olympic medal. I had support and I had, sponsors that got me through it and supported me all the way through it. You don't come out of it with a ton of money, but you come out with the rewards and the experience of doing the actual Olympic campaign, which I wouldn't trade for the world. Like, I absolutely loved it. All of my Olympic experiences I wouldn't trade. And then could have gone into professional sailing? Possibly. It just wasn't a route that I really like dove full head first into. I do some of it occasionally, but it is possible to make money doing pro sailing, and you just have to choose and commit to it.
As you're pursuing a gold medal, was your rise to international stardom, did it come pretty quick?
It came, I moved up the leaderboard quite quickly, I would say. But it was a really tough journey, mostly mentally. And so the reason I say that is because when they first announced that the laser radio was in the Olympics, I think it was like my senior year in university or something. But Paige Rayleigh was already the rock star in the fleet, and was just crushing everything and everybody. And so I had to not only catch up to the international field, but catch up to her too. And it was really hard knowing I'm working my ass off, and I know she was working her ass off too. And she was just winning everything still, and so just trying to stay mentally strong and believe that you could actually catch up, and make it a fight at the end was really hard. Then at the end of 2005, we had our World Championships in Brazil. And that was my first good event. I finished third, which was awesome. And I was super pumped with it, but Paige won it. So it was I was still second. And then the next year or so, maybe occasionally I would take an event from her, but most of the time she would beat me. And then the third year, we'd flip-flop back and forth. And then finally at the end, it really came down to who was having a good day at the trials. And then, but what I learned in that experience through that whole thing, I think as much as it was not necessarily the most pleasant experience, I think it made us both grow as sailors, to continue to push to the absolute best level that either one of us could be at.
Athletic observation is something that's important for an athlete, to watch those above them that are better, to look at their skill. What was it about Paige that you were chasing? What is it about her that was so good that maybe it wasn't in your arsenal in the early part of that process?
Oh, she was so fast downwind, so fast. So I would work my ass off to be ahead of her as much as I could upwind and hope to hold on downwind, but she would just whoop, catch right up to me.
Why was she so good downwind?
I think it's time in the boat. It's a skill doing downwinds and lasers, a skill that you develop and takes time and practice. And she was just so good at it. Yeah.
So now you make the team. Talk a little bit about when they hand you that jacket or that hat. that says USA on it. Now, I'm assuming you've become a naturalized citizen at this point, right?
Yeah, I became a citizen in 2002, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've had some other Olympic guys on the show, and the answers are pretty much the same. It's a thrill of a lifetime. But do you remember what it's like to all of a sudden realize that as they're handing you your Olympic, it's real now? The guy gives you your jacket and your hat and your card or whatever you get as part of that team. What's going through your head at that point?
Yeah, it's super cool. It's super thrilling. You know, it's not necessarily like real yet to me because you're not actually in the location, everything like that. But you know, it's the start of it, and you're getting like amped up more and more, and the excitement for the whole experience is building.
Now, Beijing was the site of the 2008 Olympics.
Yep.
Your last race, if I'm not mistaken, there was you kind of had to come from behind. Is that a fair estimation?
Yeah, that's a good estimation of it. Yeah. So the last race, we have a medal race, which is a double point race, and it's just the top 10 sailors. So I went into that race with a medal locked up. So I was going to come home with bronze, silver, or gold, but it's just a matter of figuring it out. I had a 7-point lead on paper, which meant in the race was like a 3-point lead, right? So 7 divided by 2. So it had a 3-point lead. So the race, we get all set up. We do our homework. We line up on the start line. 3, 2, 1, go. I'm the second boat down from the committee boat. The individual recall flag goes up, which means somebody had started early.
Right.
The guys on the boat were speaking English, but I couldn't quite tell like if they were saying like who they were saying. And I was like, well, the only way I can guarantee that I won't get a gold medal is if I'm OCS. So just to be safe, let's go back and make sure that we start correctly. So I went out to the right-hand side of the race course, did not work, rounded the top mark in 8th out of 10. And I think my competitors were in like 4th and 5th at that point. Sailed downwind, lost another boat. So I was in 9th. They were still in like 3rd or 4th or something like that. Upwind, the fleet splits to the right. I see like a small little something on the left. Turned out to be a lot bigger and greater than I anticipated it to be. But yeah, so went out to the left-hand side, got a nice big left-hand shift and a little bit more pressure than the boats on the right. Went from 9th to, I want to say 3rd at the top mark. Ended up passing a boat on this last downwind leg and finished the race in 2nd and secured the gold.
The patch of winds you found from experience, because again, sailing on Lake Erie or any of the Great Lakes, it's not constant wind. So is it just one of those things that you take a gamble and it works, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you take a gamble, sometimes you see that there's actually more pressure. It was definitely more pressure. Like I could see that, the fact that it turned into like a 30, 40 degree shift, I wasn't quite sure that was going to happen. But from growing up on Lake Erie, from college sailing, just experience, like I said, all those reps that I did in college, like just constantly making you look up, look around for wind. Where's the next pressure coming from? And that's, that is a great example of it all coming together.
I don't think of China as a great sailing power, racing power. Did they do a great job of putting the Olympics on? As a sailing?
Amazing job.
Okay. So it was good water and great facilities and what you'd expect, right?
The facility was awesome. The water, they had like the big algae bloom problem, but by the time the Olympics started, they were every morning cleaning out the algae off the race course. They had nets set out to catch it so it didn't come onto the race course. They did a great job. It was awesome. I loved it there.
Besides yourself, who's the first person that had a chance to touch your medal, your gold medal? Mom and Dad?
No, I think because I didn't get to see them, because once I got to shore, I went to drug testing, then we went to the medal ceremony, then we went to a press conference. So it was probably the press, who was that? Press, maybe, whoever was our press lady at the time, or guy. So, and then afterwards, then my parents saw it and everything.
What's it like standing on that podium and listening to the national anthem?
Oh, surreal. Yeah, an amazing experience, something you dream about. Like when I think back of being that 12-year-old kid being like, wow, that's what I dreamed of one day. And there it was.
So you come home with the gold medal. You're a bit of a celebrity in the sailing world. So I'm sure everybody wants to tug at your time and whatever else that you have available. How do you start to manage that part of it? Because now you're one of those guys. You're one of those folks up at the top of the mountain. And was that a learning curve too, as well, coming back?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely took, I think, a little bit of time off from sailing. Not a ton, maybe a month or so, but used that month to go around and, say thanks where it was due. Like thank my sponsors, thank, the people that fully supported me all the way through this. And, and it had to be done and I wanted to do it. And that was, to me, the most important thing to be doing at that time. So making sure that was a priority and getting all of that done. I got really sick after the China Olympics, like maybe 2 weeks later. I was really sick for like a week. So then had to like manage around all of that too.
At this point, do you still think you're going to be competitive as a sailor in your mind, or is this the culmination and I start to look over the mountain for something new? Because you still end up as, you win world championships in Snipes in, I think, 2010. So you're used to sailing a number of boats. So you obviously want to continue the competitive part of the sailing, right?
Yeah. Dove right back into the next Olympic campaign. So, took a little break, figured out what I was going to sail next, and hopped right into the next Olympic campaign for London.
Yeah. You also, if I'm not mistaken, did you not try for the last Olympics to go to Tokyo?
We did. We lost that on a long tiebreaker.
The only question as I'm looking at it, you're typically the helmsman, and now you're the crew. Does that change the dynamic or is that just something you learn from as well?
No, it was. I really enjoyed crewing. Like I've always been a driver, and in the beginning it was really hard because I'll be the first to admit it, I'm a control freak, so I like to have the tiller in my hand. So it took a while for me to like get comfortable with that, but Paris was an amazing skipper. Absolutely loved sailing with her. She's so good in the back of the boat, and so I just wanted to be the best I could be in the front of the boat. Because the fun part of the 49er FX crewing is that it is super physical, and it is about like going to that dark place at times and just giving it your all. And I love that.
Do you sail for recreation? You cruise, or is it always racing and it's always at max speed?
Yeah, I would have a hard time cruising. I think I would want to sit there and like fiddle with things and make the boat go as fast as possible. So
sit on the back of the boat with a beer and just having conversation is probably not going to work for you. That's fair.
No,
I get it. I think that's part of the separation between sailors, between cruisers and racers. I belong to a sail club that is all sailboats. 90% of them race. And if you don't, you're sort of looked on as like a lost cousin because you don't want to get out there and do it. So I get the mentality because it changes for different sports, but I think that's something that is very intrinsic to the sport. I think that just kind of goes. When you've had great success after the Olympics, but at some point after winning world championships and Rolex Yachts Woman of the Year, I think you won that 4 times, if not mistaken.
Yeah. The American one. Yeah.
Does CrossFit start to make sailing wind down, or does the success maybe work into one? So kind of blend us and have a conversation with where does sailing and CrossFit come together?
So I really got into CrossFit because I took a loss at the London Olympics. I took it really hard. And I tried really hard to kind of get back into sailing right after it, but there was something missing. And it wasn't as enjoyable as I wanted it to be. And then I was getting into CrossFit at that time. And so I was like, hey, you know what? Let's just do something different for a little bit. Like, done with sailing. I know what it takes to get to the top. We just spent our last, I did the China Olympics that way. And then our last 4 years leading into London, like we were full on everything, gave it our all. And I was like, I don't think I have that right now to go to Brazil. So I channeled that competitive energy elsewhere into CrossFit.
It was just, how did you come across it? Is this something that seemed intriguing, or, I mean, what was the?
How do I find it? So we actually found it in 2011. We were training in Chicago, match racing, and we were staying with our friends, and they introduced us to it because we were like, hey, we need a gym to go to. And they're like, well, come to this gym and check it out, see if you like it. And if you don't like what we actually do, you can just do your gym program. And I went in for my first CrossFit class and absolutely fell in love with it. I was so sore the next day and I thought I was like in good shape and everything, and I got my ass kicked. And it was like a 12-minute workout or something. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I can work out for 12 minutes, get completely destroyed, be so sore. Like, yes, sign me up. And so I started there. We finished out training there. And then when we went back to Miami for our next training session, I randomly found a gym, and went in there and started CrossFitting. And then Brad started coaching me, and, you know, coached me through the Olympics and my fitness and everything. And then afterwards we made a plan to try and go to the CrossFit Games.
Now, there's CrossFit working out and getting in shape, and then there's CrossFit, the competition, right?
Correct. Definitely.
Talk a little bit about the disciplines within the competitive world. So you got to go to an event. You do, what kind of events are for somebody like me who doesn't know? You do so many pull-ups, or how many? I mean, explain what the levels of and what the niches are of the competition.
So CrossFit, basically CrossFit in general is everything. Could be anything fitness-wise. So whether you're doing it for health and fitness or you're doing competitive, it is anything. It's cardio, it's weightlifting, like Olympic lifting, powerlifting, it's gymnastics, it's plyometrics, it's anything you can think of fitness-wise. When you go to a competition, you may know the workouts ahead of time, you may not. Like, you can show up, like I did an event at the CrossFit Games where we were in seclusion. We didn't know what the workout was until 3 minutes before the workout.
Why the secrecy?
Because it brings out the best athlete, right?
Okay, no, that makes sense.
The best prepared.
Do you have some idea, though, what the disciplines are? Because obviously they could throw something in that you've got to do dancing or something, and you may not be a very good dancer. I mean, I'm not sure that's the case, but
okay,
that's just the way it is.
The way the cookie crumbles, yeah. Okay. You just get good at it. You got to either figure it out on the spot or... So the beauty of it is that, like, you learn so much and you learn how to understand your body. So a couple of years ago, they put a pegboard in for the first time. Very few people had done a pegboard, and it looked like a disaster because a lot of us couldn't do it. And as we were going, we were starting to figure out, okay, this is what we do, you know? So you're athletic enough and strong enough to kind of get yourself through it, to figure out what to do or to learn it as you go, you know? But at the same time, could we have been better prepared and done pegboards at some point in our lives? Yeah. You know, so you just learn. And like, there's definitely times where they throw events at you that you've never done before, and you just have to figure out what to do and use your experience and attack it the best you can.
Is there a similarity between changing wind conditions and competitive CrossFit, where you might not know what the disciplines are, and you've got to deal with it on the spot? Does that help you with CrossFit, having to make those decisions as a sailor?
I don't know. I mean, I guess you could probably somewhat in a long way kind of make that connection, but no, I think in sailing, you don't know the wind conditions, but you know, it's almost like there's a book for it, right? Like if you see these clouds coming, it's most likely going to change to this. If it's blowing offshore, it's most likely going to do this. And yeah, it's not exactly the same every time, but you have a general idea of what it is.
Okay.
You know, they present a movement to you that you've never seen before, and they're like, go, and you're like, okay. Like, right. You're literally doing something that you've never done or never seen or heard of, right. And now you're trying to figure it out.
Nobody's going to throw a distance football throw at you. It's going to be something within the realm of
well, no, I mean, they did one year. They did throws. Like, they did throw a ball as far as you can, like, because it comes under the realm of fitness, right? Like, right. It's part of athletics. It's part of fitness. So, like I said, it could be anything.
A lot of sport disciplines have gone to yoga, and they've gone to ballet as sort of an alternate for stretching and those kinds of things. We've had some local schools look at CrossFit for various disciplines: lacrosse, football, baseball, basketball, for that matter. Talk me a little bit about, you don't have to be in the shape you're in. As I look at your arms, or as I look at my fat body, you don't have to be in the best shape, but it's really it takes into consideration all of the things you're not to get you to some place where you want to go. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. It builds general fitness, right? Like, so you're not going to be a master at something. You're going to be great, or you're going to be good at everything, right? Like that's the general goal, is to be good at everything, and you have a couple things you're really good at. Right. So yeah, it just builds general fitness, and it builds functional fitness, meaning it builds fitness for everyday life, right? So I teach you how to deadlift properly. I teach you how to engage your legs instead of just using your back. So then when you're at home and you're not in the gym and you go to pick up something heavy, you actually know how to do it. When you go to sit down, it's a squat. So I teach you how to squat correctly, so then you can sit down correctly without injuring yourself. So many people come in and be like, oh, my knees are really bad. And we work with them. Like, yeah, we train them to squat correctly, and then their knee pain goes away. And it's more just like teaching your body how to use the muscles correctly. Then I don't care how much weight you lift. I don't care, like, if we're using a 5-pound dumbbell, or, you're a crazy power lifter and can lift crazy amounts of weights, to me, it's no different. As long as your form is correct, that's all I care about. And if your form's not correct, I'm going to take the weights from you, and you're going to learn how to do something correctly, because that's what we're teaching. We're teaching you how to move your body correctly so that you can be fit for life.
Nutrition is also a part of that program.
Absolutely. Yes.
And without understanding how to eat correctly, the rest of it doesn't matter. That's fair?
Exactly. Yeah. We kind of joke sometimes, like, we have you for 1 hour a day. Try not to, like, screw up the other 23, Right. So yeah, a big part of that is nutrition. And, we don't force nutrition on people. If people want to learn about it, it is a service that we offer. But we do, you do see people start correlating how eating well translates into them feeling better, which translates to them working out better. Then they get stronger. And when they, like, slide off of the eating well, they're like, oh, I feel like garbage. And it's like, well, that's because you didn't eat right, So it's kind of like a good positive snowball effect on the eating.
I asked the questions. We had a couple of kids this year that got into powerlifting.
Yeah.
Over the pandemic, because they could do it at home. And a couple of them built themselves into real strong bodies as powerlifters, but then they lost their flexibility as lacrosse players. And right. They were half a step slower. They didn't they didn't do any jump roping. They didn't do anything other than get bigger, and they sat the bench because, well, they're not as strong. And now they understand that there needs to be more of a larger landscape of the workouts, so that there is some flexibility with also being large and strength and being strong. So I think that's part of that. Now, you own a company that the T2 behind me is your company, which I'm guessing I'm talking to you from right now.
This is my gym. Yep.
You and your husband, who was a CrossFit guy that he was in the CrossFit, introduced you to this. Am I correct?
He was my first coach, so he was already in the CrossFit scene. He got into it towards. He was in the Marines, and he started CrossFit training, CrossFit style training at the end of that, and then got into it a few years after he got out.
So if you're in Pittsburgh, I'll put the website up on the interview. So if you're in Pittsburgh, make sure you give Anna a call. I want to finish up with just a couple quick thoughts. Is sailing, competitive sailing, either locally, regionally, or nationally, internationally? Where are you with your sailing career at the moment?
I am currently not sailing as much, but I am working with the Olympic development team and coaching the next generation of Olympic sailors.
What do you know as a athlete learning to coach that you didn't know before? If I came to you, what would I expect from you as a coach?
I like to try and read everybody differently, you read everybody individually. So I don't have one coaching approach to everybody, right? So some people I'll be tougher and more blunt with. Some people I'll be a little bit more positive, and so everybody has their own, style from me.
Well, I asked the question because typically perfectionists are critical coaches. And I look at Nick Saban. He loves his players, but he's on them a fair amount. And that's just because of the way you were as an athlete. And I'm just wondering if that perfectionism sneaks in as a coach. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, because you want to make sure they do it right.
Absolutely. So yeah, I will translate what I'm trying to say to you. And I'm very much particular about what I'm wanting. It's just how I approach it and how I say it to you. I'm either going to be very direct and blunt about it, or I'll try and say it nicely to you. And it just depends on how people receive it. Like some people can take like super blunt, harsh criticism, and some people don't like to hear it like that and receive it like a little bit better in a more positive spin on something. And it not one way is right versus the other. And it doesn't make one person a better athlete than the other. It's just everybody has their different styles. And I always enjoyed like getting yelled at and like people coming straight to the point of being blunt about something, and I know a lot of people don't like that. So.
You can't lie to your athletes.
No.
You got to tell them the truth. Somebody said something to me recently, which I thought was great. The art of coaching is getting the message across with the least words possible. And I thought, wow, what a great, because if you can explain it without having to spend hours explaining it, that's kind of the gist that you're going to.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're working with the Olympic team, and any more competitive sailing on the horizon at all, you think?
We'll see. I don't know. This loss was really hard. Like I said, we lost on a tiebreaker, which is pretty much the worst way to lose. Worst but best way to lose in a way, right? Like it hurts the most, but you're that close. And then the pandemic hit, so now it's just been like the last year we've just been trying to like keep the business alive. So I don't know what's in the future, but for now it's just keeping the business going, growing again out of the pandemic, and trying to help the next generation of sailors.
Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. You are certainly an inspiration for a lot of folks, especially young women who are trying to get into the sport. You and a lot of other folks have blazed some trails, and we hope that that continues. So again, appreciate your time. Have a great summer as we get back to some normalcy. And again, best of luck, and I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.